everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webinar today. I'm extremely glad to be welcoming you all to this session from Zoho SalesIQ on bringing all of your applications inside SalesIQ using widgets and form controllers. We hope you're all staying safe during the pandemic and all of you are in the pink of health. I'm Michelle from the Zoho SalesIQ team, and I'm going to be taking you through this very engaging session on how you can bring all of your applications right inside your chat window using some of Zoho SalesIQ's newest features, widgets and form controllers. So as always, we have our product experts on the panel here to answer your questions. So keep them coming and we'll answer them as soon as possible. Let me just give you a minute or two to tell me if I'm audible and if my screen is visible. In case you have any issues, please post them in the chat box and we will rectify those issues. So let me just give you a minute before I jump into the webinar. All right, so I'm just hoping everything is well with all of you and I'm audible to all of you. So let me jump right into the session. I'll tell you how I've planned out this entire session. I will be talking about what widgets and form controllers in Zoho SalesIQ are, what they are made of, how you can build them inside SalesIQ, and what options you have with respect to building these features for your business. Then about the components inside each of these modules, some popular use cases and how they can benefit you, a SalesIQ partner, and so on. So without any further ado, let's get started. So before we jump into the specifics, let me just show you quickly inside the Zoho SalesIQ 2.0 portal about what really happens in a day's activity of a sales executive. So here we are inside SalesIQ 2.0's portal. So this is the new user interface, which has been completely revamped to make live chat and customer engagement super efficient for you. So here we have a visitor who has initiated a chat, and the chat was initially picked up by a bot, and the visitor had opted to talk with a human operator, so the chat has been transferred. So as the operator is viewing the visitor's conversation here inside his own chat window, you would have seen something new on the right hand side. So this panel right here is brand new inside SalesIQ 2.0, and this section is what we call widgets. So these different sections right here, these different panels here are the different widgets that are available for you to build inside Zoho SalesIQ. So here we have an appointment scheduler. So here we have another widget called Zilka. So this is basically used to display information about the visitor to your operator. So usually to know everything about one particular customer that lands on the website, operators actually find the need to navigate through multiple applications, right? So this can eventually lead to a lot of distraction and hence result in the loss of a lot of valuable time. To eliminate this and to save time for both operators and website visitors alike, Zoho SalesIQ has come up with a feature called widgets and another one called form controllers. So today's session will be throwing spotlight on these two very, very powerful features that you can use to improve the experience for your operator and your visitor altogether. So here, the widget that you see here named Zilka is a widget that has multiple sections. So a widget is made up of sections. I know this might be sounding a little Greek and Latin to you, but I'm going to be telling you about what each component inside a widget is. So you have a bunch of sections that come together to build, make a widget. So you have you can display different categories of information inside these widgets. You can also access a form and you can fill up a form. You can perform an action on the form and you can do so much more, schedule an event or, pull out data from an external application and display it inside the operator chat window. So the possibilities with respect to widgets and form controllers are just limitless. And today we're going to be talking all about these features and what they can do to your business. So let's go back to our slideshow. So first things first, what are widgets? So widgets are basically interfaces in which you can bring data from external sources inside your live chat window. So you can either pull data from any application and display them in SalesIQ's live chat window, or you can push data from SalesIQ to any application with actionable elements. For example, say you have an organization with 100 operators, and these operators all require access to customer details. You don't necessarily have to give them all access to the complete visitor data collection. With Zoho SalesIQ's widgets, you can just pull out and display only the information that is required by your operators to help them answer visitors' questions. So they're basically used inside SalesIQ to display different categories of information inside the chat window and make your operators' jobs easier. So they can be created to display CRM, desk, Salesforce, and so many other integration data. They are highly customizable and they support a wide range of textual and visual elements to make the data that is displayed more actionable. So the one that you see here in the screen on the right hand side is an example of a widget. So this is a widget named Zilker Travels that has a bunch of sections that display different categories of information for the operator to communicate with the visitor, to learn about the visitor while also communicating with the visitor simultaneously. So now that we know what widgets in Zoho SalesIQ are and what they're actually for, we will look at what these widgets are made of. That is the building blocks of these widgets. So basically, a widget is a collection of something called sections, and each of these sections has multiple elements and corresponding actions. So it's exactly like how you like in this particular diagram. So inside a widget, you have a collection of sections, and inside each section, you have a bunch of elements and also a few actions that you can perform. So in this widget right here, we have different sections. So the sections here are customer level, account info, and recent purchases. So these are the three sections that together form the Zilker Travels widget. So it's a collection of, this justifies the statement that a widget is a collection of sections. So the sections are just to view the data that is available inside your widget. So they are used to show multiple data components from one particular application. So we now know what sections are. So let's look at what is inside these sections. So inside these sections, we have something called elements. Say in customer level, points, the membership type, and the expiry date are all elements. Similarly, in account information, the login ID, gender, created on, and full name are all elements. So elements are basically the lowest level of data inside a widget, and they are unbreakable. It doesn't end here. Then we have actions inside each of these sections using which you can perform actions inside the widgets. So here, when you look inside the customer level section, we have two different actions. We have upgrade and downgrade and the cancel actions. So these are all the elements using which widgets in SalesIQ are built. So widget is basically a collection of sections, and inside each section you have a bunch of elements and actions that can be performed. So now that you know that these sections are the building blocks of widgets, let me tell you what the different types of sections inside widgets are. So we have info, listing, field set, metric, profile, and empty section. So I'll tell you what each of these sections are and where exactly they can be used. So here, before I jump into the details, I just want to tell you that I have screenshots of a widget that was built for a brand called Zilker Furniture. So I'm going to be comparing the different, I'm going to be explaining the different sections inside a widget using this particular use case. So the first section that I have here is the info section. So this section can be used to display lengthy information like descriptions and other such details. For example, you can display information concerning an order that was placed by the visitor, like the name of the item that has been purchased, the price of the item, the status of the shipment, etc. So here, like we had looked at earlier, the item name, the net price, and the status are all elements. And you can also perform actions inside each section. So here you have the cancel order button, which I'm clicking will cancel the order that was placed by the visitor. So you can view the necessary information inside this particular section, and you can also navigate back to the main section where you came from. So this is the info section. Next comes the listing section. So this is actually the main section that I was talking about earlier. So this section can be used to display a list of records corresponding to a conversation. So here we have a list of items that have been purchased by the same customer in the past. So you can also search through requests if you're looking to find something specific. So previously we had looked at the info section. So the info section is reached once you click on one of the entries inside the listing section. And once you're done viewing all of the information in the info section, you can just click on this back arrow and it's going to go back to your listing section, to the main list of elements where we had started. Then you have the field set section, which is also another section like the info section. And this one is used to display short information like the name, email, lead creation date, etc. So the field set and info sections are almost similar, except the fact that information in the info section is displayed one below the other. And in the field set section, it is displayed in an LHS RHS fashion, like the one that you see here. That's about the field set section. Excuse me. Then we have the metrics section. This is particularly used to display key metrics or statistics. So this basically has the title and a data space with a maximum of 3 entities. So this section can be used to display more information in less space, and it helps you weigh out your most important data points. So here we have details like the points that have been scored by the visitor, the type of membership he or she is enrolled for, and the date of expiry of the membership. So if the operator sees that the visitor's membership is about to expire and the operator wants him or her to update it before an annual sale or something that's coming up on the website for the visitor to be able to avail offers, he can just quickly look at the metrics section and then he can send out a quick message to the visitor asking him to upgrade his expiring membership. So this section also has 2 actions right here, like like what you see here in the screenshot: upgrade, downgrade membership, and cancel membership. So these actions can also be done in the same window with 0 navigation. Next one is the profile section. So as the name denotes, it is a profile of a company or a person. So it's an exclusive layout to display the details of a company or a person. So all details about the visitor's company are displayed, like, the company name, the website URL, contact details, employee count, and annual revenue. Finally, we have the empty section. So this section can be used if there is no data to be displayed inside a particular section. So you can also have actions in empty sections like the one that you see here. You can directly add a new request from the empty section and populate it in the list. Now that we know about the different types of sections that are available for widgets, let's look at the contextual information that is required to build the widget. So we don't want to have the same static widget for every visitor. We need something dynamic. So this is possible only when you pass the context to the widget code. So the following are the list of contacts that are going to be sent to the widget's implementation. All right. First is the operator information, the block that you see here. So this parameter contains the details of the operator who is going to be accessing the widget, like the email address of the operator that's accessing the widget, unique ID of the operator who's viewing or accessing the widget, and the role of this particular operator. So with this parameter, you can give operators the privilege of accessing information, and you can also perform actions with the operator's email. Say, for example, if you want to display only certain information to an operator who is maybe an associate, you can define the role here. Then comes environment. So this parameter contains the details of the environment in which the widget is being accessed. Say, for example, the data center in which the widget was invoked, and the language of the operator who's viewing or accessing the widget. So if the operator's language is English, then the widget is going to be rendered in that language. And if it is French, then it's going to be rendered in stretch. Then comes the environment in which the operator has accessed SalesIQ. That is, if it was on the web, mobile, or on a tablet. So if you want to display only selected data on your mobile, you can just set the client as mobile and the widget will be rendered accordingly. Then comes context. So this parameter contains the details of the context for which the widget is being invoked, like, the type of entity for which the context is being invoked, conversation, contact, visitor, or company, the unique ID for the entity, and the object that contains the entity data based on the context. So this can be shown in the conversation window, contact window, and visitor window. So when you view an entity in a conversation data will be displayed, and the same applies for contact and visitor window. Then we have action. So this parameter contains the details of the action that is performed inside your widget. So here we have details like the type of action that was performed. So the values here for the type can be either search, they can be a button click, they can be navigate, or navigate back. So the search query in case the action type is search, and button name in case a button is clicked, or list element name that was clicked or triggered during the action. So all of these are available inside the action parameter. And finally, we have the target parameter that contains the details of the section and the element from which the action was performed. So while I'm talking about all this, just make sure you bring into mind the initial structure of a widget that I had showed you, and it will help you relate better with the features. So like I said, target contains details of the section and element from which the action is being performed. So this parameter will be available in something called the action handler, which I'll be talking about during a later part of this session. And it has details like the name of the section in which the action is performed, reference ID for the element from which the action is performed, and reference IDs for the section in which the action is performed, and also the reference ID of the action that is performed. So it has reference IDs for the elements, the section, and the action. So this is the target parameter. Now that we know what context is passed to make a widget dynamic, let's look at the responses these widgets can return to the user. So widget detail right here returns the list of sections that have to be included inside a widget. So this basically contains the entire structure of the widget, as you can see in the screen. Here in the example widget, the sections displayed are metric, which is customer level, field set, which is the account info, and listing section, which is recent purchases. So this basically returns the list of sections inside a widget. So this is widget detail. So this is the return type of the detail handler. You have the banner return type. So this return type can be used to display a success or a failure banner based on whether the action performed inside the widget was a success or a failure. So there'll be no changes to the widget in this case. And this can be used in case a button is clicked inside a widget section. In case this particular button clicking action is successful, a success banner will be displayed for about 2 to 3 seconds inside the operator chat window, and then it disappears. So here in the example, we see a success banner that has been displayed as a result of successful deal creation. So it says deal added successfully. So this is the success banner. Then comes the sections edit return type. So this one contains a list of all the existing sections that have to be edited or modified. As of now, only updating of sections is possible. Adding or removing new sections isn't. So you can have a success or failure banner again displayed once the editing is successfully done. Here, the add deal button right here is clicked and a deal is created successfully inside the widget using the sections edit return type. So the deal created is right here. So you click on this button, a form opens up and you enter all of the inputs and a deal is created. And once the deal is created, you'll again see a response like this displayed inside the operator chat window. So this is basically the banner that will be displayed once the deal is added here. Then you have section navigate. So this particular return type will return the response of the action handler if the action performed was a navigation. All right. So say there is a clickable entry in one of the sections of the widget. The operator can click on this particular entry and view the detailed information inside that particular entry, and then navigate back to the section where he originally navigated from. So this return type facilitates that. So here the user can click on the visitor's first purchase, which is a engineered wood four-door wardrobe. View details about this particular purchase, like the price of the product and the status of the shipment, and then navigate back to this main list. So this is facilitated by section navigate. Then we have form. So if there is a need to collect data from the person that's accessing the widget, that is your operators in SalesIQ, this return type can be used. So the data collected in the form will be controlled by the form controllers that I will also be talking about during the second part of this session. So when a button is clicked, a form basically opens up, and then the user can define the input fields in the form. And in the widget here, the lead, source, and contact owner are elements, and add deal will be your action. So when the add deal button is clicked, this particular form opens up, and the user enters inputs like the deal name, the deal stage, amount, and the close date, and clicks on submit, and the deal is created. So this is the form return type. So now that we know what contextual information is passed to the widget implementation and what responses are returned, let's look at the operational flow of the widget. So first, we have an operator picking up a chat from a website visitor and beginning a conversation. So once the conversation begins, the detail handler is executed, and the details of the widget is rendered with all of the sections. When the widget is rendered, the operator clicks on a button, say the upgrade downgrade button, and what happens is that the action handler is executed. And on successful completion of filling the membership upgradation form, a success banner is also returned in the operator chat window. So this is the overall flow of how a widget works. So it basically functions on the basis of two handlers, detail handler and action handler. So the operator views a conversation, and the widgets are rendered using the detail handler, and then when an action is performed, the action handler comes into play, and finally we return a response in the operator window. So this is the overall flow of how a widget works. So let me quickly show you how you can add a widget in SalesIQ. So I'm just going back to my SalesIQ portal, and here I'm just going to click on settings, and under developers I'm going to navigate to widgets, and I will click on add. So I'll give my widget a name, and then I will choose a brand. So I can choose more than one brand to associate my widget with. So for now, I'm just sticking to one brand, and then I'll choose the module. So I'm going to choose all 4 modules: conversation, contact, lead, and company. And here I can choose the platform that I want to build my widget with. So you have 2 options with respect to building your widget. You have SalesIQ scripts that functions on Deluge, and you also have Webhooks. So you basically choose a platform and then click on create widget. And once you click that button, your widget will be created and you will be navigated to the code builder. So the code that you see here is of the detail handler. So I'll be talking about this set of handlers next. So you have the detail handler. You have the default code written for you already. So you can just, start building with this. You can make changes as per your requirements. You can make changes to the default code and you can start building your widget, or you can just entirely erase all of this off and start from scratch. And while you're building, before I go there, let me show you, this is the action handler. So these are the 2 handlers based on which widgets are built in SalesIQ. So these are the 2 handlers, and while you're building, you can also preview what you've done so far by clicking on the widget preview window. So it's going to show you how your widget will look inside the operator chat window. So before you publish, you can make sure everything is okay, just like how you do inside your Zobot builder. so that you don't publish the widget when there are glitches still there. So you can keep previewing your activities every step of the way by clicking on the widget preview window. And like always, you have these drag and drop elements that you can use. And once you're done configuring your entire code, you will click on publish and your widget will be published for that particular brand that you have chosen. So let me go back to my presentation and tell you what handlers in widgets are. So you know about the operational flow of a widget now, and you might have heard the words action handler and detail handler when I spoke about the flow. You might have been wondering what those features are. So let me tell you what these handlers are. So these handlers are both built using Deluge scripts, and they are similar to the ones that you have in Zobots. If you know Zobots and if you've tried building Zobots, you might have come across the trigger handler, message handler, context handler, and failure handler. So the handlers in widgets are also similar to the ones that you have inside your Zobot module. And these handlers are the two places in which your operators can perform customizations, because all the rest of the actions are going to be performed by the visitor. So the first one is the detail handler. So this can be used to configure the information that will be displayed when a widget is rendered. So the input parameters passed here will be the details of the operator, the environment and the context, and the response returned will be the list of sections inside the widget. So the one that you see here. So we had already looked at widget detail return type previously. So your inputs will be operator, context, and environment details. And once the detail handler is executed, the response returned will be the widget detail. Then comes the action handler. So this one can be used to specify what happens when an action is done in a widget. So the inputs passed to this handler are the details of the operator, the environment, the action, target, and the context. So these have two more inputs in addition to the inputs that we had passed inside the detail handler. So they have operator, context, environment, action, and target. And once the action handler is executed, the response can be of 4 different types. So it can either be a banner, you can display a banner, or it can return a form, or it can be sections edit and sections navigate. So the example displayed here is that of banner. So as a return type, a banner is displayed inside the operator's chat window. Now we know all about creating widgets in SalesIQ using Deluge scripts, but you don't have to worry if you're not a Deluge expert. You can also create these widgets using Webhooks. So to build your widgets using Webhooks, you can just follow the following procedure. Let me just show you quickly. So again, I go back to the widgets section. I click on add, and I'm going to give my widget a name. I'll choose a brand. I'm choosing multiple brands now, and then I'm choosing the modules as well. And now I'm clicking on the Webhook platform. So I'm choosing the platform, and I'm then going to click on create widget. So now I will have to enter the URL for which I want to invoke the webhook. So here is my URL. So I've just entered the URL, and I can click on save. And I can also generate a public key and secure my webhook. So you just have to enter the URL, click on save, and then you can click on publish once you feel that everything is set. And you also have an option to regenerate the public key. And like before, you can also preview your widget before you publish it in the widget preview window. You can choose the module of your choice and preview the widget. And once you're done, you will click on publish, and you can also edit the URL whenever you want to, and also configure the profile of the widget if required. So there are a few requirements that you have to follow to build your widgets using webhooks. So first of all, your URL must be a HTTPS URL, and it has to be publicly available on the internet, and it must return 200 on HTTP head request. Also, versioning support must have been implemented. So make sure you meet all of these requirements before you start building the widget using the webhook platform. Like I had mentioned earlier, you can enable the secure your webhook option to verify the data with a key pair validation. That is, if this particular option is enabled, then while executing the webhook, a signature will be created for the payload data with a private key. And the webhook server should get the signature from the X signature header, and then it has to verify it with the payload data received in the end and the public key using the same RSA crypto system. If this particular verification fails, they can ensure that your data is tampered or it has not been sent from SalesIQ. So this particular process ensures two-layer security. So it ensures that the data is sent from the SalesIQ server and that the data is not tampered. So a maximum of 2 public keys are allowed for each webhook, like the one that you see here in the screenshot. If only one public key is available, the delete option will not appear. The oldest key will be used during execution, and the key used will be indicated by the in use label. So do you see it here? So the key that is currently in use will be displayed like this. With this, we come to the end of the overview of webhooks, widgets in Zoho SalesIQ. Now we move on to form controllers. So what are form controllers? So they can be used to collect multiple structured data as inputs to perform a particular action. So forms can actually be used as a part of a widget's response to collect data from your operator and then push this data to any application of your choice. For example, the operator can collect information such as the complaint from a customer. Then he can create a ticket in your support desk application with the help of a form. It's as simple as that. The one that you see here is the example of a form that is used to raise a request to return the purchased goods. So all the operator has to do is to select the item that has to be returned and enter the price of the item and click on add request, and an entry will be created inside your desk software. Building blocks of a form controller. So inputs are the building blocks of a form, like how sections are building blocks of widgets. Inputs are the building blocks of a form. So a typical form actually consists of a header, then it has a note or a description about the form, and then it has a collection of different inputs and actions. So here we have an example to help you get better clarity. So in this membership form example, the header of the form is the membership form. So I've labeled all of these different elements for your reference. So the header of the form is the membership form, and then we have a little description that says that the form is for upgrading or downgrading a visitor's membership. Then we have inputs like, the customer's name, email, country, membership type, etc. And once these inputs are entered, we perform an action. So this can be either a submit action or it could be a cancel action. So you see all of these elements labeled right here in the diagram. I'll just give you a minute to take a look at these elements before we move on to the details. move on and take a look at the contextual information that is passed to the implementation of the form that makes it dynamic. So there are a lot of different contextual data that are passed to the implementation of the form controller, and I've listed a few on the screen for you. So we have inputs like location, email, radio, password, telephone, text area, checkbox. We have hidden, we have dynamic select, we have all of these different options available as inputs for your form controllers. So checkbox fields allow users to select one or more options from the list of options provided. And when you use date and time, you can define the value as date and time. You can choose a particular date and the time in that particular date. And when you use email, the field value will be email. And to create an input of type location, you define the type value as location. And there are radio buttons in forms that allow users to choose one item from a list of all possible options. So you have so many different inputs like these. So here in the next two screens, I've displayed, in this screen, I've displayed the different types of inputs that are possible inside a form. So here you have the email input. Here you have dynamic select. This one is going to display a drop down when clicked upon. And then you have the radio button with a select membership type. You can just choose one of these. So this has radio buttons. And here you also have a checkbox. So you have so many different elements like these that are passed to the implementation of the form controller. These are just examples of what each of these inputs would look like. I haven't defined all of the inputs here, but I've just given you examples of what these inputs might look like inside the UI. So this one is the checkbox. This one is the date time. So when this calendar icon is clicked upon, a calendar shows up, and then beneath that you will have all of the available time slots. And then you have email. So you will have to enter the customer's email address here. So this will validate the input that you enter. In case you don't enter an email that matches the typical default email format, it's going to throw an error. And then you have the radio button that we had looked at earlier. So here you have the select input. This one is again a drop down, and one option can be chosen from here. And then you have the number input. So here we have price, and this has been entered in numbers. So these are just a small bunch of the from the huge list of inputs that can be used inside your forms. So we know what contextual data is sent to the form controller. Now, let's look at what responses these form controllers return. The first one is a banner. So this one is similar to the banner that we had looked at in the widgets responses. So it can be used to display a success or a failure banner based on whether the action performed was a success or a failure. And in the example here, we click on the add deal button, and when the deal is created successfully, we display a success banner for the same, like the one that you see here. The next one is again sections edit. This is also one of the return types that was available in widgets as well. So this one will contain a list of existing sections that have to be edited or modified. And again, you have a success or a failure banner that can be displayed once the editing is successfully done. So here again, we will have to relate to the same example. So we have the add deal button that we had looked at here. So the add deal button is clicked upon, and a form appears. A deal is created successfully using sections edit, and then we finally display a success or a failure banner. Then we have something called form error. So the form's error object allows you to throw an error message instantly when a user adds an input that is not intended or has missed out on a mandatory input. So form error messages can be handled for the entire form, or you can handle that for individual fields as well. So here in the example, we display an error message when the user has missed filling out a mandatory field, the email field in the form. All right, so we just show an error saying that email is mandatory. Then we have form modification. So this return type can be used to remove, clear, update, add before, add after, enable or disable fields in a form. So here, when the email subscription box is checked, we display the checkbox section that will again allow users to choose the type of emails that they want to receive using form modification. So now that we know about the inputs and the responses of form controllers, let me tell you about the operational flow. So when a button in the widget is clicked, a form appears in the operator's chat window. So this is the first step. The change handler is then executed. So the change handler can be used to either add, remove, or update fields in the form depending on the input that is made for a certain field. Once your inputs are entered, the dynamic field handler is executed and a dynamic drop-down appears like the one that you see here. And once all of the inputs are defined, then the action that is required is performed. So here it will be the submit action when this button is clicked upon. The submit button, the submit handler is invoked. So this is the basic functioning of a form controller. So first comes the change handler and then comes the dynamic field handler, and once the action is performed, the submit handler comes into play. So this is the basic operational flow of a form controller. So before we move on to the next part, let me show you how to add form controllers in Zoho SalesIQ. Let's go back to our SalesIQ portal. Again, I'm just going to go from the first step. I'll click on settings, and under developers, I will navigate to form controllers. And now I'm clicking on add. I'm going to give my form a name. And I can add a description for my form if necessary. And then I will choose the platform that I want to build my form controller with, and then click on create form controller. So once this is done, you will be taken to the default script builder where you will look at all three handlers that are available for you to build your form controllers with. The first one is the submit handler. The second one is the dynamic field handler. And then you have change handler. So we'll be talking about these handlers next. So like in the widgets builder, you can do the same actions here in the form controllers builder as well. So you have to save your code, and then you can also preview it. You can preview the form inside the preview window. You can choose the widget, you can choose the module, and then you can choose the conversation, and then you can take a look at what your form looks like. So looks like there's a minute issue here. All right, so basically you can preview your form before you publish it on the website. So once all of your editing and configurations are done, you can just click on publish and your form controller will be published successfully. So now that we looked at what these widgets are built upon, the different handlers, I'll tell you what each of these handlers are and what they're used for. So similar to the handlers and widgets, we also have handlers in form controllers, which is where all the customization for the form is done. So there are three handlers: submit handler, change, and dynamic field handler. Let's start with the first one, the submit handler. So basically, on submission of a form, the default action will be considered for your submit button. So the default action here is the submit action. If the cancel button action is not handled in the function code, all of your input values will be cancelled by default and the form will not return any response. So the list of attributes that will be passed when this handler is triggered are first one, the details of the operator who's accessing the widget, then the details of the environment in which SalesIQ has been accessed, and the details of the form object and the input values. And this can have three different outputs. Once these inputs are passed, the submit handler is executed, and there can be three different outputs. So it can either be a banner, it can be a form error, or form sections edit. So here in the example, a form is filled and the submit button is clicked, and we display a success banner on submission of the form. So I'm reusing this example quite a few times to make it easier for you to understand the different concepts that are involved. So it can be any one of the three different outputs, not necessarily a banner. Then you have the change handler. So this can be used to either add, remove, or update fields in your form, depending on the input that is made for a certain field. So again, what inputs will be passed here are the details of the operator who is accessing the widget, the details of the environment again, details of the form object and the input values, and then the details of the field and the selected input that has triggered the change. So here the response of the change handler will be form modification, as you see here in the example. So once the change handler is executed, you will get a modified form like this. An additional field will appear. Then comes the dynamic field handler. The dynamic field handler is associated with the dynamic select field type. So this is basically for the field based on user inputs. So here the list of menu items to be populated in the drop down will be configured in the handler as a comma separated value list, and then the search trigger works based on the following criteria: starts with and contains. So your search results are basically populated based on the starts with criteria followed by items that match with the contains criteria. So the inputs passed here will be the operator, environment, form object, and the input values and the details of the field and the selected input that triggered the change. And once the dynamic field handler is executed, the response will be as in the example. So a list of countries is populated dynamically here in the drop down. So this will be the output. So your output will basically be options. Now we know all about creating form controllers using Deluge scripts. So again, like in widgets, you also have the option of creating form controllers using webhooks, and you will have to follow the same procedure to create a form controller using a webhook. The only difference that you will see in the procedure is while you're choosing the platform, instead of SalesIQ scripts, you will be choosing webhooks, and then you will have to enter the URL that has to be invoked, and then you perform the securing procedures in the same way you did for widgets. So with this, we come to the end of the technical part of the session. So now let me tell you about a very few popular use cases in which you can use widgets and form controllers. So you can use them to schedule appointments in services like Google Calendars or Zoho Calendars. You can get and show data from customer databases. You can add records and custom modules of CRM, that is modules other than lead and contact. And you can retrieve or create data inside Zoho bookings. You can raise a travel request on Zoho expense while communicating with a visitor. Say, for example, you are communicating with a visitor and the visitor is requesting for a live demo of your product at his office or at his location. You can simultaneously raise the request using the Zoho expense widget. You can get your travel request approved and send out a confirmation to your visitor saying that you'll visit him on so-and-so date and so-and-so time. So you can do that as well. So there are a lot of different use cases in which you can implement these widgets. Your options are open. You have a multitude of possibilities with respect to widgets. So how can these features benefit you as a partner of Zoho SalesIQ? So these features of SalesIQ will be available to your clients at no additional cost. So because they are already signed up to SalesIQ Zoho One and CRM Plus, And you can provide a lot of different custom solutions for all of your clients. There'll be a huge amount of deployment costs involved, and not to forget the periodical maintenance costs. And building these features for your clients will also make you a SalesIQ expert. So what are you waiting for? Start exploring the feature right away. And if you want a sample script to help you start building these widgets or form controllers, you can download the zip file from this particular URL that I have on the screen here, and you can paste it in your portal right away and start modifying it based on your requirements. And let me just quickly tell you the rules to download and use this particular zip file. So you will find individual text documents for each of the handlers in both widgets and in form controllers. So you can just copy them, paste them in the respective sections in your SalesIQ portal and publish them. And in case you want in-depth information on how to build widgets and form controllers in Zoho SalesIQ, you can enroll for our developer training. And if you have any queries, you can feel free to write back to us at support@zohosaleSIQ.com. And also make sure you follow us on Twitter for more updates on all of our features. And now we're going to dedicate this time entirely to answering all of your questions. We'll answer them as soon as possible. And in case we have missed out on any of your questions, don't worry. We will get back to you via email. And within 24 hours, we will be sending you a follow-up email along with the presentation deck and the help documentation that will help you get started with widgets and form controllers in SalesIQ. So for now, just keep your questions coming and we'll answer them as soon as possible. Thank you for staying tuned with us. We're hoping to see you in our next sessions as well. We have a bunch of sessions coming up and we'll keep you updated about all of them. Thank you so much. I'll see you in our next webinar.